Yo, hairless makes of the blue sea. It's me. How y'all doing today? Look, that hot and fire fresh Friday chapter. You already know. I've been saying it for how long, and the greatness does not diminish in the slightest, right? Because chapter 10 Nintendo 64, Eggheads research Stratum. Let's just jump into it, man. No antics, right? All gas, because it's Oda's awaken the gas, no me. Van Auger and Kuzan captured Pudding, which we were aware of, right? But they were on their way somewhere. Now, I think this is probably the first time in the story that we've seen a cover chapter tie into the main story like immediately. So they're actually en route to the chapter. That's kind of hilarious. Now, I had thought before, actually at the point where we saw Law fighting Blackbeard, right? Up until that point, I thought the cover story was in present tense, things that are going on concurrent with what's going on in Egghead Island and all these other things. But it turns out that was in the past, which it makes sense, especially because if you think about what Blackbeard brought up when he first approached the law in the first place was pony lifts and the rubbings. So he's trying to get the rubbings and pudding at the same time, one fell swoop. Now, by plot device standards, right, this looks really bad for Law. And we kind of talked about that last week, right, where Blackbeard rarely fails in the story. It's just not a thing, right? The only failure, I guess you could say, is when he ran up on Akainu. Well, not ran up on him, but, he never got a ship in exchange for Bonnie, who is also currently in the story. But other than that, right, every plan he sets out to do, he succeeds. We don't know what happened at Rockyport, but it seems like he succeeded there too. So Blackbeard is in the air, still sitting on Stronger and Doc Q. Pause, and he tell the Law like, look, ain't no running, and the Law's like, if you know what this is from, I'm not running. Right? He told him last chapter, man, winner take all. It is what it is. Law, that's my guy, man. Other than Zoro and Luffy, it's sloth. All right? It is what it is. I don't know how else to word that. But Law tells Hakugan, shout out to Haku, and, to go take care of the polar tang for the time being. And then he tells Shachi and Penguin basically to get in the water and like take cover, not like hide, take cover, but provide cover. And I'm like, wait a minute, why is Law giving instructions to his crew? We've been saying this for years. His crew is absolutely trash, right? Not we. Law wasn't struggling against nobody but Yonkos, the Hawkins thing, but they were struggling against gifters, right? Smile tier users, like. It's just, but every situation does have its advantages, right? And what it seems like his crew is most equipped to fight on the seas, which makes sense, right? That's a huge advantage compared to, like we don't really see, ship battles and water battles very often. Like in the story, it's just not, we assume it happens off screen, right? Because the Marines always pull up with a bunch of ships, and we see all these other factions, even the medium-sized tier people, right? Not necessarily a Yonko, but not a scrub either. They do have decent-sized crews, but all Law has is one sub. But they're probably so used to fighting in the water, like how Shachi is explained later on in the chapter about being from the North Blue, and that the cold, harsh seas of the North Blue. Now, we don't know much about the geography of the North Blue like that. So that is a very interesting statement that maybe there's something to that. I don't know. But, with Beppo, being a polar bear to begin with, it kind of ties into their whole theme. But I'm just like, wait a minute, y'all fighting Blackbeard, man. What is your crew finna do? But all right, let me let Law cook, man. So after he tells them that, of course, he immediately activates Harum, right? And basically does what he does to most things, and he dissects things and he cuts Stronger in half. And to me, he's taking the same approach as you know his plan with Kid, right? To first When they first attacked Big Mom, they wanted to limit her mobility. And this is like the same tactic that he's doing with Blackbeard, which in the context of the location where they're fighting, it makes sense to want to limit his mobility anyway. 'Cause it's not like, he can't fly from what we know or any of those other things. But it just made sense to me to take this type of strategy, right? And Blackbeard says something pretty, I don't want to say wild, but it's just like, how could he not know this? He basically says, like, no one told him Law could do that, meaning him cutting Stronger in half. So that means during the Rocky Port incident, whatever Law did, they might have been on the same island, but there's no way Blackbeard has seen Law fight before, because this is something he does all the time. Like, this is one of his main things, like cutting things in half, including people, in his introduction of his abilities back on Punk Hazard, what he did to the G5 gang, right? So for him not to know this means, and then two, who was Blackbeard talking to? Where did he get I want to know where he gets his information from, where maybe he thinks he knows what Law's abilities are, right? That's why he approached this fight this way. Had he not, and so, because for him to think it's awakening when it's like basic abilities that we've seen Law use, that to me is kind of interesting. So either some information is missing here where Blackbeard thought he knew more about Law than what he really did. Because like I said, he thought him cutting, Stronger in half was an awakened ability. So it's just like, it's really interesting to me what he thought Law's abilities were. That makes me think it's a chance he might not know about the famed ageless surgery. I wanted to say the mythic, but I kept wanting to say mythical zone in my head. But I just thought that little part there was just a small line, but I'm like, something about that. Blackbeard knows a lot of things, but at the same time, information that maybe you get out of a book about devil fruits, some things may have changed, right? Whether that information was being hid on purpose or it was disabilities that people hadn't unlocked yet, as far as the history of devil fruits. Because we don't know how many people have had the OP, and similar to the situation with Luffy and, Mr. Two and Granny Shaman and Bartolomeo, right? Even Bartolomeo. There's just probably variations of things that were just never seen before. So there was no way to document them. I don't want to get too into that, but just you guys know what I pay attention to. And him thinking that his normal usage of his fruit is awakening was, Blackbeard slipping, man. But anyway, as Blackbeard is falling, because the horse Stronger had been cut, he uses a move that I don't think we've seen Whitebeard ever use. He basically used the Gurgura to stop his fall, or at least make it temporary. It doesn't look like you can use this ability to fly, like I was saying before, but he does stop himself from falling into the water. Because the Law was going for the OTK. He wanted this fight over quick. He's like, look, I can get this work in just like anybody else, but there's no way it's in his favor the longer this fight drags out, right? It can't be in his favor. It just can't, especially with him not knowing that where Aokiji may or may not be, which we see Blackbeard's ship is in this chapter, and that's what Pudding was probably transferred on. Aokiji, there's a chance he's just chilling, not to be, no pun intended, but just chilling on the ship right now, because if Van Auger is outside fighting and he was with Aokiji, then Aokiji's probably in the ship, which was something I was already worried about to begin with. I think we talked about that last week, because it's just like, without Aokiji, this might have been a way to get away, but with Aokiji here, you're definitely not getting away. But, as Blackbeard is falling, right, he's like laughing. Like, normal Blackbeard stuff. Like, well, I messed up again. Same thing that happened in Impel Down. Not knowing about, not paying attention to things, not knowing about other people's abilities. He seems to know all this secret stuff, like how you can have two devil fruits, but again, he doesn't know things that you would expect the common informed people of One Piece to know, because like, dude, he just fought Big Mom and Kaido, and Bao Huang. Some of those fights were being recorded, so it's like I'm pretty sure some things are out there. Man, I don't know. You know what? I'm getting too much into that. You guys know how I get though, but basically, as he's falling, he's laughing. And similar to when we first saw him post time skip use his ability, when he was using his ability just through laughter, right? And all of the fodder, aka Law's crew, right? The scrubs and the bums that are just on the ground, they can't even stand up. Like it's their first time in the hyperbolic time chamber. Like they're just, we're on 10x gravity, and they can't, lower your head. Oh, on some Kira and Bleach. But I was just like, that's kind of cool, because Blackbeard has always been like that about, like, he just doesn't really panic like that unless this, except for when he thought Whitebeard was about to kill him. But he did was trying to stop himself from falling to the sea. Now, Law, I just, like I said, I was not expecting the rest of his crew to be competent in any way, because even when Doc Q starts tossing the apples, now, we know how One Piece characters can be, right? Especially fodder. Instantly, anybody throwing anything, especially a dude who just infected y'all, that made y'all change gender with a virus, you don't even question any object that he throws. You just assume it's something bad and you get away. And you're like, yo, it's bombs. I'm like, okay, we're not doing the super fodder thing. Like, we're going to have competent fodder. Okay, I'm like, okay, this looks a little bit better than what I was expecting, because you guys already know I've been trashing this crew the entire series, and they probably heard me. But like Doc Q is basically like, oh, I hope Stronger is okay, and then we see Shachi underwater on some Kyogre type stuff, like legendary Pokemon. It's water spout time, and this. I don't want to say it's too crazy, and I don't even want to assume he's a fisherman. It did cross my mind, though, because it's just like, well, I don't know what his name means in Japanese, but we know what penguins are, and they live in the sea, and I guess a penguin man could be kind of a fisherman. I don't really know, but you also have Koala, right, who's part fisherman, but she can use fisherman karate, in which she taught it to Robin, and Robin's just a normal human, and she can use a fisherman karate technique. So if this is along those lines, he doesn't have to be a fisherman to do this, and clearly this is not a devil fruit ability, but it was pretty clean. he caught me off guard. Like, I would have been just like the Blackbeard Pirates in this situation, because I never would have expected his crew to do anything like relevant ever. So he hits the apples midair and just blows them up, and then he starts popping off at the mouth, all right, Black, he didn't say, all right, Blackbeard, but, it was more like, I don't know what you thought this was, man, but we from the North Blue, dog. It's just not going down on the seas. Like, we grew up in the harsh cold, them waters, man. If you live in Canada, places like that, where it's just cold for no reason. Like, the sun doesn't exist here, man. Like, when we say it's hot outside, we mean it's like 10 degrees. And I don't mean Celsius, just 10 degrees. Like, that's a warm day. So I thought that was kind of cool, because it kind of hints more to, like, how, what, that's not even important. I'm getting sidetracked. But what he did was cool. I just didn't see it coming. And again, you're fighting sea battles, and, it makes sense. Let me take out my opponent's ship, right? Let me limit their mobility. Again, we're back to limiting mobility. And then now during this time, Beppo, which I don't even know how he knows what's going on, because he's another one. Like ZFB said last week, man, what does he even do? So he yells at Gene Bart, another bum who's never did anything. He said something to the effect of, like, sniper, calling out snipers like they're on the old school Turtle Beach headsets, like playing Call of Duty, and he pops up out of nowhere. Wild Law is actually now using his awakening. This part where it's like, Blackbeard, you should have been worried about this. You thought that was awakening. You're not ready for what's about to happen, because we've seen what happened to Big Mom. And, I'm not even going to get into the power scaling part of the Yonko. It is what it is. It kind of doesn't matter at this point. But Law's abilities work on everybody. I don't, why would Blackbeard be any different? It's probably even worse for him, given the negative aspect of the Yami Yami, at least as far as we're aware of with the, the double damage thing. So everything's super effective against him. But he gets hit with Shock Willie. And I'm like, it's Big Willie style. It's that time again. And the same thing happened to him that happened to Big Mom. So we do see here Law, regardless of, him not being the one to fight Kaido one-on-one in the same aspect as Luffy did. He can clearly hold his own against one Yako by himself. Where, he's looked at a certain way because, like, all his everything about Law that makes him broken is all devil fruit related so far. But I think that's going to change. And it's something I brought up last week where he was changing out of, he was transitioning back into his original equipment. I think Oda was actually trying to foreshadow that Law Awaken conquers. If he makes it through this fight, especially for now, we've seen twice in panels with clearly Blackbeard, using conquerors where it's like we know how big of the deal that is, and the gap difference, like it makes up for the gap difference or skill difference between characters. I would think, right? Where it's the same with Luffy. Luffy wasn't stronger than Kaido when he beat him, right? But that combination closes the gap just enough where everything Kaido had already went through, it was enough to knock him out or kill him based on, how you interpret some of the things said in this chapter. So that really, to me, it's just like, well, for this to actually be an equal fight, Law might awaken something and the panel might look exactly like similar to what it did because we've seen the lightning. That's the part that threw me off about him changing back. I didn't know if that was just like, they're trying to make Law look cool, which you really don't have to do anything to Law to make him look cool. He already just is that guy. But because there was no coloration in the lightning, and then we've seen it in the sea with Blackbeard, and then we've seen it again in this chapter with Blackbeard using his quake bubbles more than once, where it's just like, okay, if we're going to see that from Law, because there's been speculation about that to begin with, I think it would have to be in this fight, right? That's just, if it goes that route and Law just doesn't get low diffed after this, because, right, because what happens next, right? He's fallen. Van Augur right there, just like Zoro, to the rescue, When it was time, when Luffy was about to get clapped by Kuma, there was Zoro. The 2 to 3 occasions during Roof Piece when, Luffy was about to get clapped by, no, my man, what clap Kaido, cuz that Zoro was right there. So, having the cohesion in your crew, because even though we don't see them fight, clearly they know how to work together. They do a lot of crazy stuff off screen, and for the most part, with the exception of the Akainu exchange, they just take W's, man, like wherever they go. So this was something I talked about last week, like because I thought Law's crew was so weak, where like their teamwork, even if Law was able to deal with Blackbeard, at least contend with him, he would just get packed out by the rest of the crew, just like how they did Whitebeard. Like if they did that to Whitebeard in Marineford in front of everybody, Blackbeard he doesn't care. Like he cares about his prestige more than he cares about how he acquires his prestige, if that makes sense. Because with the whole Whitebeard thing, that was greasy. What he's doing right now is greasy, depending on how you look at it, right? Because he wasn't bringing the smoke to Shanks, right? And I'm not just talking about Marineford, right? At no point does he ever go for the heavy hitters, right? He didn't step foot in Wano. He wasn't even thinking about coming to Wano. If he had came to Wano, the Blackbeard Pirates probably would have did a little bit better, I think, than the Allied forces in the beginning. just because their abilities are so filthy. And I think they're, at that time at least, when the Straw Hats were still in Wano, the Blackbeard Pirates, I think, were probably still stronger than them. Sanji and Zoro obviously closed that gap quite a bit. And I don't mean stronger as like each of them individually. I just mean as a group, because the Straw Hats don't really fight that like together all that much. So like I was saying, that the teamwork cohesion part with the Blackbeard Pirates might be a little bit better. Their problem might just be their arrogance, and they're just as goofy as the Straw Hats, but probably worse, because in serious situations like this, when they're supposed to be fighting a certain way, Blackbeard would just do weird stuff and let stuff happen to him, and just taking chances he doesn't need to take. Like when, again, in Bill Down, when they underestimated Magellan and he could have killed the whole crew, like literally, like they just wouldn't be in the story no more. They'd all be dead. So, I don't think, like, when it comes to a strategy based fight, I get it as the law, but he just got, Blackbeard got too many heavy hitters, man. And, a guy who can warp things, like clearly, like I just said, Van Auger saved his life right now. So I do think, like, even if Blackbeard fell in the sea, somebody would have been able to go get him. But it's just a matter of who that would have been that we're not aware of or something like that. Because as far as we know, all of the Blackbeard pirates are implied to have devil fruit abilities. But I wouldn't even be surprised if we find out that Blackbeard, because I've talked about this before over the years, where part of the reason why I think Yami Yami is able to negate devil fruits is because it negates certain aspects of devil fruit essence, or however you want to word that. And that also includes probably weaknesses too, though, because that's probably why he takes double damage, because there has to be, there has to be some kind of give and take, right? I still think, like, every person can't have two devil fruits. I think this is, obviously there's the ideas about his body being different and things like that. And I'm not even saying those are wrong, because they do make sense. But even before I knew about those things, I always thought it was because of Yami Yami specifically. And that's why he went after it, because of that, right? Where it's just like, it doesn't matter what ability you have. If he gets his hands on you, it's over. Like, except for, I will bring this up, and, I don't even want to say it's more of an anime thing, because depending on how you interpret it, the manga is somewhat the same. But if we see, like we seen at the end of before we cut over, right, in the Blackbeard and Law fight, where he goes to use Kurozu, right, Vortex, I want to see if it's going to be the same hand again. Because so far, for the most part, Oda's been consistent with what hand he uses. And his idea I had, part of it is because of the anime, but part of it is because in the manga, when Whitebeard puts his Bicento into Blackbeard's hand, when he grabs him in his neck and he bubble quakes his face, like literally point blank range, Blackbeard is not able to negate the Gurgura. Now, one of his hands is free, and then that hand is touching on Whitebeard, but he's still able to use his fruit ability. Now, again, this is obviously pre-time skip, so there's a lot of, so you can look at that however you want. But that's something I've always thought about. Is that a thing with Blackbeard? Is he can use Black Hole and stuff like that, but the actual Kurozu drawing people in, it might just be with one hand in particular, and the other hand does something different. Yeah, that's pretty much the idea I've always thought of. So anyway, the irony of this is that Law says to Blackbeard, you having these crew members that have devil fruits, this must be rough hauling around all these anchors, which to me, the first thing I thought about was the beginning of the story, because that's, that was the thing about basically what what Shanks would call Luffy. Remember, he even had a t-shirt that says anchor on it, because he couldn't swim before he even had to go, for he already couldn't swim. So the whole joke about being an anchor, and then the other side of it that was funny was because that's how, at least me, and I'm sure a lot of people look at Law's crew. His whole entire crew is a bunch of anchors, like just holding Law back from being probably, a top 3, top 5 character in the series. It's his crew that's keeping him from doing that. So it was kind of funny to me that Oda was like, okay, I know you guys know that his crew is trash. I'm going to let them show a little something. So I did like some of the stuff like I said, the crew just being competent in general. That was almost good enough for me, given they haven't been anything close to that the entire series. But I ain't gonna lie, they went harder than what I thought. I thought Law was literally gonna have to just carry this 1v5. Now I don't want to get too excited because, like I was saying earlier, we cut to inside of the ship that's being hit because remember, Sachi and Penguin is still underwater. Like, again, when Law told him in the beginning of the chapter to go underwater, I'm like, for what? But they're attacking the ship. And we cut to two jabronis just sitting there running their mouth like, oh, yeah, we're taking a. Actually, I'm not even going to say that like that. We're getting beat up a little bit right now. But Commodore is the strongest around. And two jabronis are obviously telling us the pudding, right? And she's locked up. Um, and they show her, and this was something I thought about even in the cover chapter. When we seen pudding, she was all scuffed up. And I'm like, she probably at least fought back then. I'm like, I can respect that. Like at least she fought back. You're not going to come into my home, take me, and then that's it. It's just that there was no way that she was going to win that fight. Like, it just wasn't going to happen. You're not beating out Kiji, dog. Like, it's just, I don't even think Big Mom could just straight up beat out Kiji. So you definitely don't have a chance. Like, it just wasn't going to work out, right? So, she's just sitting there and she's basically putting this, like, if my mama's still alive, which that's interesting that she said that Oda had them say that, she's going to make you eat those words, implying, that Big Mom is stronger than Blackbeard. And it's kind of funny, right? Because it ties into the video game lore with One Piece because of the part of like I said, I haven't played many of the games, but I watched some of the like the story scenes, they were just cool. And like I was talking about, I think it was last week or the week before, it's the one where Katakuri with Brule pop out of the mirror world because Blackbeard was coming to fight Big Mom. And I think I didn't get the context of the whole situation, but I think Big Mom and Kaido had just finished fighting, and basically Blackbeard shows up, and that's when Katakuri snatches Big Mom. But Big Mom was ready to fight. And Katakuri's like, nah, we go. And just the way he stepped backwards and jumped back to the mirror because he's looking at Blackbeard and he was just looking at. And I think at that time, I had seen that along the same time when I saw the fanfic about the Blackbeard invading, the Blackbeard pirates invading Whole Cake Island. So those things kind of stuck in my head. So to me, this part is it's really cool, man. It's really cool. Like the way it's tied together, man. It's been live, but like I said, Aokiji being on this ship would only make sense, right? And Kobe's probably on this ship too, unless because we cut to my man. Another one about that. That's another top 5, dog. The Red Dog. The Red Dog, Magma Brat. He's so mad that he's on the bench. My man wants to get on the court so bad. He just want to hoop, man. It's just coach ain't letting him. It's just not time yet. The first person that has to fight Akainu post-time skip is getting bodied. It almost don't matter what character it is. I'm not even trying to use hyperbole or anything. I just really think that just because all this stuff that's been happening where, even Kizaru was like, oh, I'll go to Wano because he's still in a position where he can go out and throw hands every now and again. Similar to Sengoku, Akainu's not allowed to do that. He got to sit on a chair and do paperwork. Just stuff that he's doing it, but that's not what he wants, man. So the Marines, the world government know Blackbeard and Law are fighting right now. And he's just like, I'll just go there and body everybody. Like I could have bodied him before, but he was gone by the time I showed up. You know what I mean? So I don't know how this fight is gonna end. I want to assume, right, it would only make sense that Blackbeard wins, just because of where we're at in the story. It's just a matter of what happens after. Because, again, don't get me wrong, Lost Crew is putting on for the hood right now. But we all should know that this, it's more about does Law survive? And what does he do to Blackbeard? Because even if whatever happens, Blackbeard's going to pay for something. Law is not, from what we've seen so far, He's made every character pay, including Kaido to an extent. Kaido had to pay, Big Mom had to pay, Dofi had to pay, Virgo had to pay. Like, when it's time to pay up, man, Law, he does come to collect. He did say winner take all. But like I was saying before, what would Law really want from Blackbeard other than information that Law might already have, So we'll see, Obviously, there's more in this chapter, but that part, you guys know how I'm about Law. And the fact that we're showing Akainu again. Like I said, the next time he get to throw hands, it's going to be filthy, man. It's going to be filthy. Oh, that's what I was thinking, because of what Law was talking about the anchor thing and, them having an advantage because of them being in underwater and all this stuff. That's not getting ready to matter in about 10 seconds when Aokiji come out this ship. All he going to do is take his fingernail and flick the water, man, and turn everything to ice. So all his homies that's in the sub, they're all stuck down there in a glass bottle. And that's how they probably, and then they just probably just going to, they're going to snort lie out after, after that. But that would happen to almost any character, man. Like, it's something we talk about a lot. It doesn't matter how strong you are. You get enough strong characters, and it's time after time. I even speculate that Zebek might probably was stronger than Roger. That, like, I'm sure there's more context to God Valley's Island, but the fact that Zebek might have been that filthy where I've said this before regarding Roger was like, we just gonna have to stomp you out together, man. We can't have you we can't have you running the world. We can't. So this is almost the same type of situation, except for Law doesn't have anybody else. But he's got this awakening. I know I wouldn't be surprised if Law would be aware of I don't know when who he would talk to, similar to, like, I don't know who Blackbeard would talk to about Law to know about his abilities. But, I mean, Blackbeard's fought Ace before. Ace found out the hard way. Luffy tried to fight Blackbeard and it fell down, and Jinbei saved his life because that wasn't going to work out. And he found out what it felt like to be a regular person and not have a devil fruit again. So I wouldn't be surprised if the same thing happens to Law. Now, to tie this back to what I was saying about Blackbeard and Whitebeard, right? And what we've seen, right, about hockey. And I told y'all when as soon as we seen that statement, the community in either one direction or the other, right, was going to over or underrate that statement. And they're going to apply it to all types of places. And I already knew that was a Pandora's box statement. But for hypotheticals, right, that should also apply to Blackbeard's fruit. Now, back in Wano, because we're still not sure 100%, right? We know the amount of sea stone that was in some of these cuffs weren't exactly, full strength. And Luffy was still able to use hockey, but he couldn't really use devil fruit. So that was like a new wrinkle in a way. And this is something that's been speculated on to begin with. That by that default, if Law can't use his ability, but he can still use hockey, shouldn't he be able to use his hockey to negate Blackbeard's ability on him that's negating his fruit? So knowing Law and him being the ultimate strategist, this could be one of those situations where Blackbeard might think he has the upper hand, but Law's doing this on purpose because he thinks he might be strong enough to counter the Yami Yami long enough to hit him with Gamma Knife in the face or something of that nature. Because even though Law don't seem like it because he does all this teleport and all this crazy stuff, he's a close range fighter, man. Like, he ran up on Big Mom, dog. Big Mom was literally beating on him, and he's just like, nah. And from a physical strength standpoint, I don't think Blackbeard just physical. I know he ain't weak. Obviously, he got hands. Even Ace said, I almost had my neck broke by him with one clothesline on some cane. But I think Law could deal with at least one or two full strength, because I still don't think, again, part of the reason the Girl was filthy is because Whitebeard was massively just overpowered to begin with. Blackbeard hasn't been shown to have that kind of Again, it's up there, but I don't think it's black. I don't think he's up there with Kaido or Whitebeard. I think when it comes to just physical strength, it's Kaido, Whitebeard, and Big Mom. So, taking that to account, I could see Law letting his devil fruit get negated on purpose. I won't say on purpose, but he'll just be like, oh, okay, well, if it worked with Doc Q, because the thing is, nobody's ever tried that from what we've seen, the people that fought Blackbeard. Like I said, tying back to Whitebeard, he might have been doing it and we just didn't know, depending on how you interpret how some of the parts of that fight are shown. It was just one of those things because we didn't know about hockey yet, to that degree, where, it could look bad where it's like, okay, Kurozu, what does Law do now? Either he awakens, conquers, something to do with advance, something with hockey, right? And then boom, he either does the same thing or he hits him with the silent bubble, or, because it seems to be able to draw in, like, because see, Black Hole is different because it draws in everything. Kurozu only seems to affect like devil fruit related thing, right? So I could see Law trying to swap something with himself and it's still not working. It's just like you got to get out of a huge range. But while you're doing that, you can still get warped on Van Auger, right? We don't know. Like, so far, his warping ability has been used on people who wanted it to happen. So it's like he would have to be able to use a great deal of hockey just not to get teleported, right? Just Minato right into a Gura to the chin. I could see Van Auger doing that because he just tried to shoot Law in the back. Except for this time, instead of shooting him, he's going to go somewhere and he's going to warp Law right into Blackbeard. The same way that Law switched the clone with Dofi. That's what I think anyway. That's just an idea that I had because I think this fight might. I think those tactics will be used. As I think Van Auger would have had the warp fruit anyway. It just so happens because he's here and helping with Law. Like I get again, if Aokichi is getting ready to take care of the ice, that means Law either has to surrender or all his homies is gonna freeze to death. Right? It's going to be a situation like that, or he's just going to get packed out. It's just what it is. It's unfortunate, but let's cut on over to the rest of the chapter. Really, it's just exposition on things that we've already speculated between Bonnie and Kuma, and that's like what's Kuma's backstory, basically. Him being a tyrant has been brought up over and over again. So this has been set up for quite some time. So I do think the emotional strength will be pretty high, even though we get these goofy things like the Straw Hats being aged, which that's been a thing since I don't know how when, but we finally see it. And I'm not even going to get into you guys know I brought up Luffy's life thing. Everybody has at this point, so I won't get too far into that. All I'll say is Garp aged a lot better, man. Garp is 70. If I had to pick one being Garp or what Luffy was looking like, give me the Garp, man. Give me the Garp. I'll take Garp. Luffy looks straight up old folks home. Garp is still out here chilling, and if I gotta throw hands every now and again, man, his ability must take a lot out of him in the future, which that's been speculated on for quite some time. Where the Gomu Gomu might not seem like the type of ability someone's supposed to live a long time with in the first place. So having that brought up again, I don't know how I feel about it, but it doesn't matter how I feel because that's what happened, But it's just basically, Jinbei's talking. Seeing Jinbei as a kid is hilarious. But he was saying that, Kuma didn't have it nice, right? To the point where his people kicked him out. It was like what should have happened at Dressrosa, but didn't, by the way it's explained. And then he gets caught. And Jinbei thought, me and Jinbei was on the same page. Because as soon as I seen that, this is exactly what I was thinking. Because he says, when his ties to the Revolution Army was brought up, right? And this should be a red flag. Because it's like, when have we seen the Revolutionary Army be tied to any bad people? They don't even get down like that. I'm sure they have had to work with some bad people as informants or otherwise gather information. But just to be tied to anybody, we don't even know anything about that. So seems like it's just automatic propaganda from jump. I do think it would be kind of, I won't say cool, but if Kuma really was a bad dude, he changed. Again, I've brought that up before. That would be an interesting take on that route. But it just looks funny, right? There's something about this that doesn't make any sense. You wonder if his life sentence was based on his ties to the Revolutionary Army. Because it's like, I know royalty in this series gets away with a lot of nonsense, right? They can pretty much do whatever they want as long as the Tenryubito get their paper, and don't ask too many questions, Cobra, and you'll be fine. But you have to admit that's wild that if he was so bad of a tyrant, why did they let him run his kingdom like that? But again, we had Dressrosa and a few other kingdoms where they were ran poorly. And then we had, even Arlong Park, even though that's not a kingdom, it might as well be, the way it was ran was poorly. And then I forgot that dude's name, the rat-faced dude, Marine. His name was like Nemu something, taking bribes and, doing all that nonsense. And then you have Cypher Pole, Stussy, basically, human trafficker extraordinaire. So I'm not saying I put it past the WG to let Kuma run wild for that long, but it's just like, why did they wait until after all this time to just suddenly arrest him? You know what I'm saying? And what we had speculated on for years, right, with Dr. Vegapunk is if he's tied to them in the first place, to the Revolutionary Army. And I do like how Luffy was, when Bonnie was talking about, my pops has always hated the world government. He would never be on nothing like that, and this, that, and the third. And Luffy's just like, yeah, that's what's up. Yeah, one thing I like about Luffy, man, he's just as good at being a follower as he is a leader, right? Everything doesn't have to be about him. Every time he sees somebody, especially some serious stuff, all he just wants to see people be great. You know what I mean? He just wants to see people not feel like what he knows how things can feel, right? Even when he's talking about the whole Kuma situation, where it's just like, okay, I kind of understand where you're coming from, but man, as far as as the Straw Hats are concerned, Kuma is not, he's not some fun guy, Kawhi Leonard. But that like I said, I've been way more interested than I thought in her whole backstory and how that's going to tie into the main story, because clearly it's going to be important because it is Kuma. And, it's not lost on me to that. I'll talk about that another time. But seeing her have a lightsaber is interesting, especially because I gotta stop saying interesting. But she put it on her hip, and remember we was talking about her possibly taking out Vegapunk. It looks like she found her weapon of choice. I don't know if that was like a lightsaber, like wood. I don't know what that. It looked like a lightsaber at first, but the way she smashed it in the ground, it reminded me of. I think it was Iron Man 2. Yeah, that was the one where they're at the racetrack, and he started getting whipped with the electric whips. I forgot the guy's name already, man. That was such a long time ago. But that's what I was thinking about, and she's looking kind of Smokish. Man, Otis, he's letting y'all feast with some of these. How the Recon Live's been putting it. Treasure Cruise. Treasure Cruise visuals. I'm not even gonna comment on none of that stuff, man. You guys already know what it is. Yeah. Especially because we see the Straw Hats again, and we kind of assumed that Luffy would end up at the top of Egghead Island, right? But the Straw Hats end up at the top of Egg Island before him, with Lilith, and they're just basically saying what was where they're going, and this is the island of the future and what they're doing. And then the Straw Hats, similar to what Luffy and Chopper and Bonnie and Jinbei, they already got their change of clothes for this arc. Now it's their turn, and hey, look, whether it's Nami or Robin, man, everybody's winning this chapter. Nami, Robin, Bonnie, everybody wins. I just shout out to y'all, man. Shout out to y'all. But they're going to see Punk O1 Logic, and we get a cut to him expositioning where I guess basically based on this conversation, O1 probably is the main Dr. Vegapunk, right? Or at least speaking for him on his behalf, like he's the main one, almost like, I don't know how else to put it, but he's probably the main one. Even if he's not the main body, he's the main one. That's why he like was probably talking to Lilith and giving her instructions on what to do, and Lilith is actually listening to him because he's bringing the straw hats right here. So clearly there is some kind of ranking order, even if this ain't the original body or anything like that. So he's explaining to Dragon that like the problem with being a genius is that you can see the future, you can see your own future too, and I think I'm going to die. Now, we didn't know it was Dragon at first because then whoever, right, speaks, he just goes, it's not nothing to play around with, Vegapunk. He doesn't, the only thing I noticed is the word doctor was left out. So I guess that implies like a more friendly or, camaraderie type of, I don't know. Maybe it's not a big deal, but I guess we're about to find out because he tells Dragon, I might be dead soon. Which we know about Cypher Pole being on the way, but we also know about the situation with Bonnie, right? You don't know who's going to kill him. Or he could just flat out, like Whitebeard, die because he's old, we don't know exactly how old he is, but we know he's old enough to where anything at his age is natural causes. It doesn't matter what happens, it's just going to be natural causes. So, oh yeah, I knew it was something, man, that I wanted to bring up. So you guys know I bring this up from time to time with the different frequencies and chemicals and names they bring up in the series. They brought up a name I hadn't heard in a while, and I think it's the same thing. I'm about to go back this weekend and reread some of Fishman Island because I've brought this up to you guys before about the active component of sea stone. I thought it started with an M, so I don't think this might not be the same word, but it almost seems like it is. But Lilith brings up where they're talking about Sky Island and the aircon recreating things, and I've brought this up before. The aircon looks like it's something that the people were supposed to have to improve life, right? Where you can grow food, however you want, wherever you want, have a livable climate, et cetera, et cetera. Lilith brings up pyrogloin, which I'm almost certain if it's not the same name of the substance, it rhymes with it or it's close to it. I almost want to say, because I always forget his name when I bring this up too, the starfish from Fishman Island that had his own clothing line. Roster Beanie Man, starfish dude, talked about the chemical or the component. I think he called it like paraglobin though. Something close to that, which sounds like close to a word that we have in real life called myoglobin. So I want to know if because if these are just like Sky Island clouds, right, as far as the composition is concerned, that means devil fruit users will be weak to them if they fall in the clouds, similar to Sky Island. So I don't know what that part's about. It might not be that important. It's just my mind doing that thing that it does. But I really think that's it, man. Like this chapter was kind of wild because of the way it ended. And even though we're going on break, I think we need a break because yeah, Hunter x Hunter drop. New episodes of Bleach, like God knows what else, So, yeah, man, thanks for stopping by. This is a wild chapter. I know I talk more about the law and fight, but it's just like the other stuff probably will get explained a bit more and probably will have more depth to it than what we get from the Blackbeard and Law fight. I wouldn't even be surprised if we don't get anything else more from the Law and Blackbeard fight for like a few chapters or something. Because the way it transitions, like the whole, meanwhile, Egghead Island means we might be sticking here for a chapter or two, which I don't mind. I actually interested in this part of the plot, referring to Bonnie and the situation with the Revolution Army and how that's going to tie to Kuma and what's going to happen to Dr. Vegapunk because Cypher Pole's still going to be here, right? We got all this stuff going on. And Robert D. Gucci McLucci ain't stepped foot on it. They're not even here yet. But we do see that Zoro and Brooke decide to stay behind, which I'm good with that. I'm good with that, man. Get fire and ice, man. In Soul King Brooke, man. That's more than enough for Cypher Pole, even if they got to fight the Seraphim. That's not even me just overhyping the Santo Ryu. It's really hard, like I've been talking about, to anticipate how strong Cypher Pole has gotten since. I want to assume they've gotten strong at the same level just to be, for them to be a reasonable threat, or else why bring them back in the story? but they had the Seraphim, and the Seraphim could just be broken. like but it's a problem child, so that might work out in the Straw Hat's favor in some way later, or Dr. Vegapunk for that matter. But we'll see, man. We'll see. I hope y'all enjoyed what's going on. Like I know I have. He's just been on one. Rest in peace, off-screen Oda. I guess there's no more of that. You will be missed in a way, because sometimes I just think it's funny when he trolls everybody by not doing certain stuff. But the final saga is here, man, and so are we. So I will catch up with some of y'all a little later when I get to go online and catch some streams and stuff. So yeah, it'll be easy. Peace.